Put on my costume here.
Ah, you got your cool glasses on.
Well, they pull from the reflection. They kind of. I'm looking at a screen all day. It's nice to have not have that glare.
Right.
Anyways, we are here today. Oh, it automatically muted. That's wonderful. We are here with Janet Brooks, a fantastic composer, extraordinaire musician, very talented woman with a lot of interesting perspective. And I'm sure you have some wonderful stories. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Highbox and I'd like to thank Slack for allowing us to use their tools to communicate and collaborate with our Composer Exchange. Welcome to the High Note, where we are sharp. We want to be sharp. We want to do great things by helping people learn more about the community of composers that are out here. And Janet, you have a wonderful story, I'm sure. Tell me a little bit about first. We met at we met at Taxi, is that correct?
Yes. In 2022.
2 years ago, which was, they had come back after COVID, and that was really neat. And that was a wonderful it's a wonderful experience, Taxi. And for the folks that are newer watching this, taxi.com, you can go learn about it. And they're a curation service for briefs and music to music supervisors. And you were a featured artist this time. You had your music picked apart and plugged into this awesome TV show. And I tell us about that experience, and then I'd like to hear your journey into the music, how where you all started. But let's start with Taxi for right now.
Sure. So, if you recall, about a month before the rally, so the rally is the uh, first week of November. There you go.
I had that cup today.
So
It's
tax,
not sponsored by Taxi, by the way. Just
right,
let you know we love you.
we're just fans. Um, so about a month before the rally, Taxi sent out a special brief because this TV producer was doing a special presentation where he was going to take people's cues and actually go into his video editing software and show how he uses those cues under an actual scene from a TV show. So I sent 2 tracks in, not thinking that anything would come of it. But about a week before the rally, the head screener from Taxi called me and he said, we're going to use your tracks. We need stems. And so he told me what I had to do, and I delivered everything to him. And so the key thing about this presentation was that because it had content from TV shows that had aired, the TV producer was not allowed to record it, which is what they usually do at every Taxi presentation. So if you weren't in the room, you missed it.
And that was my favorite presentation of the whole convention this year, because there's always this question when they say you have to have edit points, or well, what should you have in your stems, because everybody has different ideas of what kind of stems. And he really did a wonderful job, and you had some great music to work with all these various ideas and little the way that you had segmented it. And so that was really a great presentation.
Right. So he was looking for what are called tension cues, right? So it's music that goes under a tense scene in a TV show. So one of the tracks that I sent in was a very sort of electronic-y sounding, synthy sounding tension cue. And so he showed, and it had a lot of layers in it. So it had a couple of synths. I think it had some strings in it, um, some percussion and sound effects and stuff like that. So in the presentation, he showed how he not only chopped the music up sort of from a timeline perspective, but also the different layers. So the different stems. So the synth stem went here, and maybe the percussion stem all by itself went somewhere else. And so it was really interesting to see how that went. And so I remember that um, he used my track in 2 different versions. He did one where there was he used more of the track, and then the second version, it was very sparse. And so I just remember thinking that in the sparse version, if I hadn't known that that was my cue he was using, I never would have recognized it, because he really just took the thing apart and used only what he needed in a particular scene. So
There was a really good point. There were two really good points with that. One or three. Okay. One was that he said, I want a toolkit.
yes,
I want you to give me a toolkit to work with.
yes,
The other was that, you had mentioned he did two different versions of it. So if he's going for, something that's going to be on, more broadcast television, kind of a, cable TV versus a streaming service, they're different mixes, essentially, different edits. Because like he said, somebody's listening to the show while the dryer's going and they're doing other stuff around the house versus something that somebody's got their headphones on and they're watching on their iPad like intensely. They're
right.
different audiences and have different connections to the mood and the emotion and so forth.
Yes, exactly.
What was the third thing? There was a third thing in there that he did really. Oh, the third one was, give me enough good stuff so it will not end up on the cutting room floor, basically.
Right,
Which
right.
was like, okay, the director said, no, I need to change this. Well, they don't want a new cue. That's a big pain in the rear for them. They want to just repurpose what they have. So if you've got enough stuff in your layers, then he has more to work with. And you did a fantastic job of giving him a lot of different layers that he liked. So I'm sorry if you keep going.
No,
But that's an important
that's
point.
that's one of the things that made that presentation so eye-opening for a lot of people. And I was talking, I happened to catch Michael Laskow, who's the owner of Taxi, between sessions, and he said that he is going to, oh no, I'm sorry, it was in that session. After it was over, he said to the TV producer that he wants him to do that same presentation for the library owners that use Taxi, so that they can see what their end users are doing with the music that they're pitching to them. Because I think that, and it's true of the composers as well as the library owners, that you tend to think of your cue as kind of one monolithic thing. Okay, this is the cue. You don't necessarily think of it as the pieces that are useful. This percussion section, these strings here are really good, or something like that. So that's one of the things for me anyway that was really eye-opening. It's like you said, he said, give me a toolkit. So
Well, he was like, well, he was also a composer,
yeah,
right? So he was like, put me in front of a room full of library owners. Let me think yeah, let's do it.
well, not only is he also a composer, but he's also a member of Taxi. So
Yeah, exactly.
I actually saw him in one of the other presentations, so I went over and chatted with him a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's a really interesting follow-up to that whole thing, and that is that, so in that presentation, I was not the only composer whose music was used. There were also two other composers whose music was used. And now the TV producer said to me that he cannot license music directly from composers. He has to use a library.
Mhm.
And so one of the other composers whose music was used in that presentation, for the rest of the weekend, he was intent on getting together a deal for the three of us with a library, so that we could package up all the music that the TV producer used and deliver it to him. And so he managed to do that. So that was one of the library contracts that I ended up with as a result of being at that.
Congratulations. That's fantastic. Well,
Thanks.
yeah, and that makes sense. I remember, was it 2 years ago? I forget the guy. He's like, gold records all over his wall. The old guy that kicks off the session anyway. He's like,
Oh, it's Michael Lloyd.
Yeah, he's famous, done some crazy things. Well, he's given this talk about, well, be bold and get out and be aggressive with getting your music in front of people, right? Something like that. So when I went up to the stage to I hand him a flash drive with a bunch of my cuts on, and he was like, he went to grab for it, and he was, oh no, I got go through taxi. But I'm like, I wasn't trying to bypass. I'm just like, I'm trying
Right.
to do what you told me to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a world of great resources through that convention, and it's all about community, which is wonderful. So now, how long have you been a member of that group of Taxi?
I joined in 2020, just in time for the lockdown. So for the first, let's see, the rally in 2020 and 2021 were both all virtual.
Hmm.
But I attended and I thought they were great. And finally, when Michael decided uh, to do it live in 2022, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go. And I was blown away at how much better the live rally is than the
Oh, it is absolutely. I mean,
you there. I met so many people there. It was great.
well, yeah. Well, so let's back up a little bit and kind of start from the beginning, and because this is all about hearing stories, which this was a great story, and but where did you start in music? And then, we'll kind of go through the journey. I mean, were you in high school playing clarinet or something? And then I don't know, a lot of people started in high school band back
Right.
when schools actually had, good band programs. Yeah, they diluted the arts. That's a whole nother rant I won't go off into. But where did you get your start and inspiration for music?
Well, I when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I have a very clear memory of this. My father had a friend who was moving to Florida. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. So we lived in a single family house in Brooklyn. And this friend of his who was moving to Florida had a piano, an upright piano, and didn't want to move it to Florida. So he asked my father, would you like to have this piano for free? You know? So I think my father had an idea that he wanted to learn how to play. So he brought the piano into our house. And I have, again, as I said, a very clear memory of at some point begging my parents to let me take piano lessons.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so when
That's
I
usually the other way. You're going to take piano lessons or else.
wasn't like that at all, I don't know.
That's fantastic.
It was, I couldn't tell you what it was about the piano, but there was something about it. I had to learn it. And so when I was not quite 7, my parents found a teacher who was walking distance from my house. And she normally didn't take students under the age of 7, but she decided that she was going to give me a try. And so I started piano lessons, and obviously I passed because I studied with her for, oh, probably 10 years, 11 years until I started college. So all through grammar school and high school, I studied. And she was a classical teacher. So I studied the classics. She was not the kind of teacher who did a lot of drills or boring exercises or stuff like that. Her philosophy was you learn how to play the piano by actually playing music from different composers. And so I was from a very early age exposed to Chopin and Bach and Schumann and all of the big guys, and Bach and Beethoven and all of that. And gradually I, got better and better at playing. And when it was time to decide what to do as far as college goes, I decided that I wanted to major in music. And so that's what I did. And I went to Queens College in Flushing, New York,
Hmm.
which had a very good music department and still does. The music department is now actually a separate school within the college. It's called the Aaron Copland School of Music. And I commuted every day from Brooklyn, New York to Flushing, Queens, and went through sight singing classes and music theory classes and orchestration and choir, and because all the So all the people who didn't play orchestral instruments, they shoved us into the choir. So I ended up in the choir with my fellow pianists and guitarists and vocalists, and we had some fun in there. And so after 4 years, I got my degree in music. I also took some theater courses while I was there because I was always very interested in musical theater.
Did you do accompaniment work for musical
Yes,
theater?
I did. I did. When I was in college, I went, one of my classmates also was part of a local theater group, and they would do things like put on Godspell and other things, and I got involved with that. And so I would be the musical director. So I would rehearse with the singers, and I would perform during the performances of the shows. And that was just so much fun. I loved it.
Well, that's a good gig. I did a lot of music theater, but as a drummer, that was my main thing, which
Yeah.
really
So
it's, it's a
you just
fun it's a fun community. I mean, I liked it because it kept me out of the bars, right?
yeah.
You go play a blues gig, which I love the music, or R&B, whatever. But it's usually a steady gig. It's going to be Wednesday through Sunday, depending on matinees.
Right.
And you're gonna come and do your thing for a couple hours, and you're gonna go home. That's a beautiful job. Usually, I mean, it pays reasonable. It's not, but you have more time. It's a healthy environment. So I love the music theater community.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
I didn't get paid, but I didn't care because I liked it. And so
You would
after
have continued after college, though. You would have.
for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there are events that happen in life sometimes, Chris, where you think, wow, if X had happened instead of Y, I would be in a completely different place. So my pivotal event, one of them, was I applied for a job as the musical director for a children's theater group that was based in Lincoln Center. I
Wow,
remember
cool.
all the details, but apparently I got pretty far along in the selection process. And the only reason why they didn't pick me was because I didn't have children's theater experience. And so obviously the other person that they did pick did. So as a result of that, since I didn't get that job, I needed to get a better job than the one that I had. And so I ended up working on Wall Street. I got a clerical job on Wall Street. And I realized that I really liked it. It was fun and I seemed to be good at it. And so that was me for like the next 30 years. So
Wow.
I really put music aside, and I got married and had kids and all of that.
How many kids do you have?
I have two boys.
Two boys? Okay. And one of them's a musician, right?
And one of them, yes, my older son, Mike, is an excellent bass guitarist and guitarist. Uh,
Hmm.
my younger son, music wasn't really his thing, but he loves music and is very knowledgeable about it, but does not play an instrument. Anyway, so the next stage in my life where I sort of put aside the career part, I was looking for something to do.
Hmm.
And so I dusted off some of the music that I had written in college. I did compose when I was in college, and not just for school purposes. I did it on my own.
Hmm.
And so so that was about 7 years ago. And so that's what got me started in music production, because when I
Retired from your other gig?
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in our community. They did the things that they needed to do to create a stability in their lives, because being a musician is not always a stable thing. You're going gig to gig.
Right.
But but the thing that, and I noticed with Gino took some time off. I took 20 years away before I came back here. I've been only back about 5 years, but the point is that the when you come back to it, you've got such a more mature approach to the music. I think. Um, Gino, kind of felt that. Did you feel that kind of coming back to it, you're getting more out of it, and you have so much more to give it?
Well, I feel that way now, but not initially. So
You're like swimming, you're like dog paddling, trying to catch up. Where the hell, how did this whole music business
well,
change,
well,
right?
you know what it was, Chris. I mean, so I decided I was gonna try and do something with music again. And so I thought, okay, I'll buy one of those fancy electronic keyboards where it has the drums and the this and the that. And so I went online to look for one. And while I was doing that, some other search results came up and they were DAWs, digital audio workstations. I had never heard of that, didn't know anything about them, but I thought, oh, well, I don't have to buy anything. I mean, I don't have to actually buy a piece of equipment. I can do this with software.
Mhm.
So I
Which
downloaded.
one did you choose? What you a Logic?
No, I chose no because I have PC. So I chose a very basic one. Thank goodness I chose this because we all know how complicated these things are. It was called Music Maker by a company called Magix, Magix.
Okay.
And it was like, I don't know, $50. And I downloaded it and I was just, I was gobsmacked. I don't know what other word to use. I could not believe that software could do what this thing, and this is like, this is like nothing compared to the kind of software that I use now.
Are you
But
using Cubase
I
now?
use Space and also Ableton.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Yeah. So once I realized that not only could I, you know, play music through this thing, but any sound, any instrument ever invented, any sound that you could imagine can be played in
Yeah,
software packages. And so I was like a kid in a candy store. So I dusted off some of my compositions from college, and I didn't start composing right away because I knew that I was so rusty that I really needed to go back and sort of be a student for a while. And so what I did was I taught myself jazz harmony,
hmm
which was one thing that I did not learn in college because everything was very classically oriented. So I learned classical music theory, but I taught myself jazz music theory.
hmm
So as my confidence grew and my skills got better, I started actually composing. But
hmm
initially what I did was I took my already composed pieces of music and I put them in my DAW and I played around with them in there. So I sort of eased back into it in that way.
Sure. Well, yeah, we have kind of a similar story. When I started getting back into music myself, I was like, I need to finish the stuff that I was too broke to record back when I was young.
Right.
So I put out this album with a couple pieces that, I wrote them all out by hand and everything and had them in a file cabinet. And I'm like, well, okay. And you know what? That was the best experience because it's like, oh, it's off my chest. I did that. I feel good about it. And then now like you can like start from a new place. And that sounds to me just what you did. You went through that and used that as your training grounds. We're in this journey as composers, we're back at school every day.
Every day.
It's a journey of education. There's just no way to know it all and refine every single skill. You take a little bit here and you build on it. But so what were the biggest challenges in coming in? So okay, you have this dog. It's like, oh, look what I can do. It's kind of a cool thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, what was the biggest challenge in kind of getting into that and then going, okay, well, this is where this, you obviously switched to Cubase, and that's a serious program with a lot of capabilities. You probably bought some libraries. And what was, you had to get the engineering pieces of it together. What was the biggest challenge in kind of getting that all together and having a baseline to work with in all the new technology?
Well, I think it was the whole production side of it, especially the mixing. So when I first got this DAW, I was like, okay, how do I get my stuff to sound like these other things that I'm listening to? And like, oh, okay, I have to mix it. Well, how do I do that? I had no clue. And so thank God for YouTube, otherwise I wouldn't know anything.
Yeah, my best friend right here, right
And
there.
And I say that jokingly, but I am totally serious. I mean, it's astounding the amount of content on YouTube. And so not only did I, soak in as much free content as I could, but I also did purchase a course for mixing, one or two of them,
Mhm.
because you have to have some foundation. You have to know where to begin. Like I didn't even know where to begin. Like, oh, I have to pan things. Well, how do I know which side to pan? I was completely lost. So obviously, this is not the stuff that you learn in college, at least not when I was in college. So I have to say that was the biggest challenge initially. And then as I said, I was learning jazz harmony, so I was trying to come to grips with a different musical vocabulary than what I was used to. Although in my own compositions, even when I was in college, I was experimenting with jazz tonalities and chords and stuff like that. And I always loved it. But I didn't know really what I was doing. I was just sort of being random. But this, I really kind of got down to brass tacks with it, and what exactly are these chords, and what are extensions, and what are alterations, and what's a 2-5-1, and all that kind of stuff. So that was a challenge as well. So, when I first started, I thought that I wanted to compose music that could be released like on Spotify and stuff. And I do have some old stuff, which is unfortunately still up there because I
And
don't
I,
try not to,
yeah,
yeah, don't look for it, please. It's not worth it.
well, yeah, you know what the thing is? Like with Spotify, I don't put anything like that up there. But
Yeah.
SoundCloud, I mean, I find some old tracks and I put it up there. Cool, let it go, you know. But
So,
Spotify is like the more professional profile I found. I mean, I don't know what worked for you.
yeah. Over the past, I would say, well, since 2020, when I joined Taxi, I started moving more toward music licensing, sort of putting aside the whole idea of releasing music, because the kind of
I
music
think
I write is really not, it's really not the kind of music that gets released, at least in my opinion. So I started becoming very interested in music licensing, and so I took some courses on that. Um, and then just over the past year or year and a half, I would say I've started now getting interested in film scoring. And so last year, right after the 2022 taxi rally, I got a short independent film from a director that I had spoken with in June of 2022.
Mhm.
And I scored her film for her.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And yeah, and I
You have
realized how
you
much.
have that up on your website, is that right?
I have a clip of it. I don't have the whole
Okay.
thing. So that was an amazing experience, and it made me realize how much I really loved it. And so, as a result of that, I started learning more about film scoring. And right now, I'm in the Momentum program. I think I
Which
mentioned
is Mark Giovanni's
it's
program, Cinematic Composer.
from cinematic composing. And
And
so,
and a lot of our community is part of
yeah,
we've
ex
all
Momentum.
participated in his programs.
Yes.
It's a great program. I mean, as a testimonial, I really love all I love the way he, explains things, and he is got a huge catalog of great videos and breaking
Yes.
down. But you're in the Momentum program, which is a little bit different. Why don't you tell people a little bit about the Momentum program and how that's different and what you're getting out of it?
Sure. So Momentum is sort of so cinematic composing has a lot of content on their website, as well as the free videos that Mark Giovanni does and puts up on YouTube for anybody. They have a bunch of courses, and you can subscribe to their website, which is what I did last year.
Mhm.
I subscribed to their website to have access to all these different courses, mostly related to film scoring. And Momentum is their step up from that. So it's their elite um,
Or
course,
mentorship, right?
but it's also a course because there are classes, and it's a 6-month program, and they choose 20 composers for each of the programs. I think they run 2 of these programs a year because they're each 6 months.
Mhm.
And so what you do is every week we have to compose, orchestrate, mix, and master a 1.5 to 2 minute piece of music in a particular style or that has a particular emotion. And the cues that we write, the challenges, as he calls them, get a little more complicated as each week goes by. And so until you get to the last one, which is one that we're working on now, which is a trailer. So trailer music is one of the challenges. And in the second half of the program,
What did you start with? Did you start with like a love scene? A
love,
love theme? Yeah, love is one of the easiest. Make
right?
it pretty.
And so that's the first half of the course. The second half of the program is actually, so in the first half, we're just writing the music. There's no video, there's no movie, there's nothing. It's just the music.
Styles.
The second half of the program is actually writing music to picture. And so I've had experience doing that since I did the film, the film score last year.
You've
And
also done a couple of haven't you scored a couple with us in our scored a picture?
yes, I absolutely,
Hope
absolutely.
you'll join us again in January, by the way.
No, not January. It'll have to be after that because Momentum it goes until March. So
Oh, you
yes,
go March. Okay, yeah. Well, after that, love to
absolutely.
have you back.
And I have to tell you that was a huge thing, joining your group and having that discipline every month that we did a cue. And so it really sort of prepared me for Momentum because Momentum is now it's every week, right? So so yes, that was a huge benefit to my experience. And so so we have courses with, so we our instructors give us feedback. We have 2 sets of feedback. One instructor gives us production and technical feedback. The other instructor gives us more aesthetic feedback. And then we have harmony classes. We have
Is Tony teaching those?
Tony is one of our feedback
Okay.
instructors. The
Uh-huh.
harmony is Jose Cancela.
Okay.
And he's great. He's great. Jose's he's funny. And a class about the real world, what contracts look like, how to navigate the industry, that kind of stuff.
Well, that's equally as important as
Is
knowing how to do the right harmony and get the right sound library plugged in
is
and the right production.
as important. Yes. And so you have to learn how to orchestrate. So you have these libraries that you use, these sample libraries that have strings and brass and woodwinds and percussion and then there's the electronic stuff, the hybrid stuff, the synthesizers, the sequencers, all of that. And you have to be able to navigate through these things and know how to use them. And so, you could always tell the beginners because they're always like, "Oh, I got this library, and then I went and bought this library, and then I went and bought this library." And we're like, "Hang on, kids, slow down. So remember, you have to know how to use all of them.
Yeah, well, that's
You
exactly it.
have to you have
Now,
you have to know how to use
question about that. So now, I took a particular approach with, how I wanted to build my template and I started off with Vienna Ensemble Pro, which is a whole nother kind of
Yeah,
system, right? There's all kinds of different ways that you can do this. And I think Mark used to say, I used to, or he used to, have this big massive template. And then, but what he's done more recently is he creates little kind of segmented templates, little smaller templates. There's a variety of different approaches, and we'll all have our preference, just like people have preference for different DAWs.
right.
We're Cubase lovers, I guess, but Ableton's a good one. There's, Fruity Loops, there's Cakewalk, there's, Logic, there's plenty of others. Um, what, uh, what approach did you take in defining what you were going to use for, templates. How do you approach, having a template? From a production standpoint, it's so nice to have my little, your little chain ready to click the buttons and turn it on and see what, and it like does most of the work for you, which is great once you get it all figured out. Keep it simple. If you're not an engineer, get your little block of stuff together. But what did you do for your template? What works best for you?
Well, I'm still wrestling with that. I finally did put together a template, and it's absolutely giant. It has everything that I own. I keep adding to it. So what I did was I started with all the things, and everything is grouped by instrument, right? And then within each instrument, it's grouped by library, right? So because I have 3 or 4 string libraries, and so I've grouped them depending on which software company they're from. Um, a template, and this was something the instructors kept telling us. A template, you don't just come up with your template like overnight. It's something that evolves, but you have to start somewhere. So start with what you have, organize it in a way that makes sense for you. And then there's some more advanced kinds of routing that you have to do with groups and stems and all that kind of stuff. So set it all up. And so that at least there's some core subset of instruments that you always have ready to go when you start a new project. So you never start a project with empty tracks. That's basically the idea. And then as time goes on, so let's say I'm using Spitfire Audio's Albion 1, right? And I have that loaded on one of my tracks. And I know that, so these are the tremolo strings. So I know that, the high end on those, I really need to take that down a bit. So you use the EQ to make the adjustments that you want. But then when you go to update your template, you leave that there. Don't take the EQ off, leave it there, because that
You don't
instrument,
want to do that again. That's the whole
you
point,
don't
is
do that again.
saving that time that you invested in that, because you can easily invest so much. Uh, when I was watching some interview with Alan Silvestri, and he uses Cubase. And one of the things that, and this is an approach that I'm thinking about looking at, because I have this massive, almost 3,000 tracks that I have up there, because I've taken, every time I get a library, you put it into this master. But one of the things that he's done, not only from the engineering standpoint, but also from all the libraries, he'll go in and he has kind of like a base small template. And then you can go in from in Cubase and go, okay, from my main big library, or my big template, I can go in and import tracks from that. So I can go in and import from, okay, I want to use Albion. Okay, so I'll go in and I'll grab all the Albion, because I've got all these presets already done, and it'll keep it there. So it's like you're pulling in from your other template. But if you're doing a trailer cue, you're not, well, I'm not going to use a trailer cue. If you're doing a love ballad, or, you're not going to use certain, you're not going to use you know, a banjo. You're going to, necessarily, you're going to use, these eclectic kinds of instruments. You're going to use different things. So have you played around with any of that, where you're kind of importing and connecting from a big template, or
No,
what is your goal
I,
as your
no, I'm not at that point yet. Right now I put together a large template. It's the full template. It's pretty much everything I own. But I didn't just put everything in there all at once. I'm putting instruments in as I need them. And so I'm just working from that. And it's not that big. So because I don't have 16 string libraries and 42 percussion libraries, right? I just don't have that.
Do
So
you enable and disable tracks? Do you work with that?
I disable all the tracks, and then I just enable the ones that I use, and then that allows it to load into memory very
Quickly? Yeah, absolutely.
otherwise it would take forever. So
Oh yeah, no, and being able to go back and forth. One of the drags is like, if you do a queue where you have everything turned on and then you save it, and then you're like, oh, I got to go make a change. When you're reloading that, it's like, because you have all those tracks that you've used loaded, so or on.
Right, right.
So it's
Yeah,
kind of tricky.
yeah. I mean, so if you're using 200 tracks in your queue, it's you have 200 tracks. There's no way around it. You have to sit there and wait for it to load. So, but I tend not to. I tend to be um I try to be I don't maybe efficient is not the right word. I try to be very um careful, I guess, with the instruments I use, so I don't just like throw the kitchen sink at a piece of music. If an instrument is in there, it's there for a reason. So I don't have, 42 libraries playing at the same, all playing at the same time, kind of a thing. So
But what process do you go through when you're writing a piece? Do you uh you first map it out on piano and do kind of a sketch, and then you go, oh, I want to put strings in here, but here's my main melody, here's my main chord progression. Do you start with that, or do how do you approach writing various pieces for?
so yes. So in Momentum, we've been taught to do a sketch, which usually means starting with the piano, but it doesn't have to. So Mark Giovanni also will sometimes start with a string ensemble patch. It depends on the piece of music. So, and an ensemble patch makes it easy to play because you can play it like a piano, but yet you get all the strings at once, and so you can. It's all about what sound will inspire you for that particular piece of music. Sometimes it's a bit, most of the time it's a piano, but sometimes it might be strings.
Mhm.
Um, so for my Momentum assignments, that's what I've been doing. For my personal compositions, I 9 out of 10 times I will start on piano because I'm a pianist, and so that's where I begin. And sometimes I will change the piano sound if maybe I'll do a felt piano instead of a grand piano kind of sound, depending on what it is I'm trying to create. And then from there I will, and then I use improvisation a lot. So I'll come up with a chord progression and I will play that chord progression until a melody comes out of it for me.
Mhm.
So I'm not the kind of composer who can come up with a great melody and then harmonize it. That doesn't usually work for me. My melodies come out of the chords that I use, which is why the jazz harmonies are so important to me, because you can get some really interesting melodies using jazz chord progressions. And then if it's not going to be a piano solo, which I do have a number of piano solos that I compose, then I decide what
Nice
other
work,
instrument.
by the way. Nice work. You have some of those available on your website.
Yes,
You have some beautiful, beautiful solo piano pieces. Really nicely done.
thank you, thank you. So if it's not going to be piano solo, then I sort of think about what other instruments I would like to be in there. And lately, I've been migrating more toward orchestral, both to get better at writing orchestral music and because I like that sound. I like a piano with an orchestra kind of a thing. I think it sounds really cool.
Well, it's yeah. This is a I mean, the violins and strings, they've been around for how long? You know, how many
Longer
years?
than a
And
piano.
yeah, actually,
Yeah.
and they resonate with us. When if you sing with a guitar, it sounds better than singing with a keyboard, because a keyboard is, kind of predetermined, as opposed to, a piano or a stringed instrument, because we tend to fluctuate in our pitch if we're singing or something,
Right.
especially me. I'm always flat, but the it's that resonance, and the string, there's imperfections in that string, but
Yes.
that's what we connect to, and emotionally we connect to those vibrations.
And so the interesting thing is that in order to become good at using virtual orchestral libraries, is that you actually have to learn how to reproduce those very imperfections.
Oh, and the articulations.
Yes,
But,
but not just the articulations. So it's is the note a little late? Is it that kind of a thing. So when a string instrument is using a vibrato, how how steady is the vibrato? Well, maybe it shouldn't be too steady. Maybe it should, the volume should fluctuate a little bit. So it's kind of interesting that we're using software on a computer in order to recreate human imperfections in performances, because that's what sounds good to us.
did you study violin at all, or wind instruments when you were in college?
I tried to play the flute when I was in college, and I kept getting dizzy, so I gave up. So no, but
Air.
in being a music major, I had to take orchestration classes, and I even still have some of my orchestration assignments that I pulled out from college, and I had to we had to orchestrate a piece by Debussy. So I chose The Girl with the Flaxen Hair, which is a piano solo, and so I orchestrated it, and I still have it in my piano. My orchestration teacher gave me an A+ and said, "Oh, this is beautiful." Wow, wow, wow. So yeah, but I had to refresh my memory with all that stuff. I mean, because
Well, some of it's knowing the range of the instruments.
but
And
you know what, Chris? You know what, Chris? You can cheat on that now, because if you have a good string library, when you bring up the plugin, it
yeah, I got the
shows.
one with the lighted keyboard with,
Yes.
I can see what that is. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
cool. But
don't worry about that, right?
but what I mean by that is, like, if you know that certain instruments sound differently at their various ranges. They have a sweet spot where they sound the best. Okay. Um, a cello will sound good low, but it gets a little bitey up there towards the top.
Yes.
It's the same kinds of things, and they can only go so low. They don't sound as, and then like violins, they have a whole different sound when it's the open strings.
Right.
So and then, but knowing the articulations, knowing that a live violin player is going to be going in between a spizzicato and a legato thing, and then into a tremolo. They're going to be doing that in like a course of a line, as opposed to, the way, you're not going to, it's not like pulling up a patch. We're going to pay, you
Right.
know, tremolo for 13 bars. No, you're going to play it for 2 notes, and then you're going to do a legato and then 3 notes, you know, understanding how these instruments work.
Right. Right.
Whether it's drums or whether it's, piano is fairly straightforward because most people are really comfortable with that. And that's usually your input device. But, some of these others, knowing how those inflections, that's part of that whole learning going to school.
Yes. And
Uh,
not only that, but when I first started using things like string libraries, I would write something and it sounded like violins trying to play like a piano. So because I'm a pianist, right? So you have to, and that I'm still learning to overcome that. But you have to overcome, especially if you're a pianist, you have to overcome writing for other instruments as though they were a piano, because it's not the same thing. Um, and so it's very hard to pin down. I wish I could give you an example, but there are certain little figures, let's say, that you could do on a piano that if you try to do them with a violin, it just sounds really stupid. So so you have to
Well,
you have to
makes
avoid that.
it sound different, like, that bluesy thing where you're gonna go, let's say you're playing a C and an F sharp, and you're bending that into the either the G or the F. You're going the blamp blamp. You're
Right.
that doesn't quite go as it doesn't work the same on
Right.
on a trumpet as it does on a string instrument. There's you can have what that note is, as if you're going to write it out in a score or in MIDI, but the sound it's just not
Yeah.
naturally the same.
Well, and there's the voicings as well, right?
Yeah.
So with a string section, you have basically the entire range of the keyboard, right? But when you're sitting at a piano and you're playing, your hands can't reach the entire range of the keyboard, right? So if
Same
you if
time.
you if you put if you try to use a string section, let's say, to play chords, the voicings are going to be too close together. So you have to learn how to spread out the voicings of your chords and your melody lines in order to really get that big string sound, if that's what you're
Duct,
at.
duct tape, your up end of your pinky. You can get that high note way up there. So you got
Right. I just, have your friend or significant other sit at one end of the piano and say, okay,
on cue. Ready? Go.
so yeah,
Anyway,
so there's a lot to learn. I am still learning, but I'm just having such a great time with it. And I do feel as though I'm improving. So the stuff that I'm doing now with orchestral libraries definitely sounds better than what I was doing, a year ago. So
yeah, before we got on, I was telling you how I'm going through my catalog and I'm kind of getting all this organized, right? And and I listened to stuff that I did in 2021. I'm like, compared to what what I've learned and grow. And that's the thing when you look at this, you probably even look now back at what you did in college and you go, it's different.
yeah.
But if you compare what you're doing like 7 years ago when you started this playing around with that other software to what you're doing now,
Oh,
and
it's
there's like probably no comparison, right? I mean,
awful.
you're seeing such a difference. It there's I mentioned this in Gino's interview because we talked to there's a friend of mine had this. I went to get his marriage license, and there was a thing on the wall, and it said, "Why didn't life's problems hit me when I was a teenager when I knew everything?" And we kind of go like, "Well, I know what I'm doing. Look what I could do." And then you like years later, you kind of look back and you go, "Ooh, that just wasn't. It wasn't quite there." So
Right.
anyway,
But you know what? But you know what, Chris? That ignorance is bliss because
that's true.
if otherwise you would say,
Experiment.
oh my God, this is awful. Why am I even bothering? But it doesn't sound awful to you then. It sounds
Well,
great. It's
the
amazing.
step. You're moving up you're going up a stairway, and it was good for what it was at that time. It's just you've matured and grown. Um, so with this music evolution, where do you see yourself being? What's your goals in the next 1 year to 3 years and 5 years? And how do you think as our careers are progressing, I guess kind of one of the elephants in the room is artificial intelligence. But where do you see yourself going, and how the music industry is evolving with a lot of these new technologies? And where do you think you're going to fit in with that?
Wow, that's a giant
That's
question.
like
Okay,
15
so
questions all at once. I'm sorry. I'll let you unpack that any way you feel comfortable.
okay, so let's talk about me. So okay, so what am I going to do? So my goal is to next year I would like to continue one of my goals this year was to get in with some libraries, and I was able to do that. This year I got three library contracts. And so next year I would like to keep doing that and add to that. I would also really like to do another short independent film. I just think it's really fun to score films. And I like the short films because they're short and
A lot of
and
work for you.
they're manageable by one person. If you start talking about, a 1.5 hour or 2 hour film, or even, let's say, a TV show with, episodes every
Oh
week.
gosh.
I mean,
That's
that's
long. That's 10-hour film.
yeah, I'm not there yet. Maybe I'll get there, maybe not. That's fine, but I like short films, so I would really like to do another one of those. As far as the music industry, well, here's a fun fact. Actually, during my the non-musical part of my working life, I
Mhm.
actually worked in the artificial intelligence field, but
Oh,
this
interesting.
was, yeah, back in
For
the,
training though, right?
no, uh,
No? Okay.
actually is in the late 80s into the early 90s. When it wasn't generative AI, there was no such thing then.
Yeah. Well,
The
that's recent. So.
Yeah. So the AI that I worked with was referred to at that point, at that time, as either expert systems or business rules. And it
Mhm.
was sort of the beginning of the period of time where businesses started incorporating what they considered artificial intelligence into their day-to-day um, uh, applications.
Yeah,
And
forms of automation essentially is what they what.
yes,
Yeah.
and things like troubleshooting. And I actually worked for a consulting company that uh, needed some AI for a client who was putting out a tax preparation package back in the when those things first started coming out. There were a whole bunch of smaller ones, not just like TurboTax like there is now. There were a
Yep.
bunch of smaller ones, and so so I spent, many weeks interviewing an accountant on how to do a tax return. So I got way more knowledge on that subject than I ever wanted.
Did you evolve into being a programmer or
I
a
was, yeah,
manager or?
I was a programmer, but
Oh,
not
okay.
not a typical. I was not like a C++ programmer. I would use specialized tools that allowed me to put together these expert systems.
Hmm.
And and so I have
More of an integrator, or you actually had to dig into code?
I had to dig into it was a code of a kind, but again, it wasn't a formal computer language like C++ or
Mhm.
Java. It was specialized. They were
Commands and functions.
special.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were we would have we would use the specialized piece like a DAW. You think of a DAW as a specialized piece of software, special
Yep.
piece of software that created these kinds of systems.
Well, that's
So
fantastic.
I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for AI. Um, but again, I'm also a little leery because this is a different kind of AI than what I've worked. This is AI that actually creates stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I'm keeping an eye on it, and I'm glad that you put out a lot of content on that, and so you can't ignore it anymore. I was ignoring it for a while, but you can't ignore it. But I will tell you that I have plugins in my DAW that I use that incorporate AI. And so I'm all for that. That's great.
Yeah, that they're they're nice tools. And if they can enhance you, I mean, I use ChatGPT all the time because it saves me time
Yes.
in writing documents if I want to communicate something for a variety of different projects, right? Um, if you can use something like a scaler that's going to grab a particular style of arpeggio, from a romantic uh, era, a specific style,
Mhm.
you can leverage that, um, and as opposed to try and play it if it's not your thing that comes naturally to you,
Right.
right?
Right.
The same like EDM is not my I'm not that's not me, but one of the experiments that we did with artificial intelligence is I went out and I use AI to create an EDM kind of MIDI groove,
Hmm.
and then I laid that in, and then I did my thing on top of it, which was wicked fun. Uh, but the thing is you can grab from various styles that aren't within your wheelhouse. You still understand the aspects of the theory that you want to use, and the progression and those pieces of it, but just getting that flavor that you want, it can get you started. Even if you end up playing it in yourself afterwards, you go, oh well, that's all that is,
Right. Right.
as we're doing that. So it's great for inspiration, and there's a lot of things that it can do. What I get nervous about is this next generation of generative AI, where right now, like an image, you can say, you type in, I want an image that looks like this. And sometimes it's even in real time, the new one by Stable Diffusion. It's pretty amazing. But if they're able to do this with music, where you're going to put on your headphones and you're saying, Siri, I need something to get me out of this horrible, crappy mood. And it'll just like create it on the fly for you. Like, like a Zumba class in your headphones all of a sudden, or like, hey, I just want to chillax and relax. And all of a sudden, boom, it goes into a little, night vibe, sleep kind of music or something. There's levels of that are going to be real and they're going to happen soon. But I think there's still going to be a place for us as composers as we are trying to, create unique music for particular emotions as they connect to film and video. Now we're going to be competing with something that can grab all this knowledge that we're learning in these courses, like you're learning with Mark, and it's going to have it at its fingertips. So, but that human touch, I mean, we are humans that express ourselves, and that expression and that emotion, I don't think that it'll be able to emulate the emotion, but it won't be able to have the emotion, if that makes sense. You as a player, when you play the piano, there's a difference between you sitting down and playing the same piece of music on the piano as a player piano would play it, you know.
Mechanically.
In the DAWs, I have a little more nuance because they're grabbing from you, but it's just not going to be the same. I think that'll take a long time to get that emotional, expressive
Yeah.
piece of it.
Well, I hope you're right. I think that I think the industry is starting to realize the conflict in this area, and they're starting to say that we won't copyright anything that has AI generated music in it, and all those kinds of things, and not just music, other art forms as well. So we're not obsolete yet, and I think it'll be a
Yeah.
very long time, hopefully never, until that happens. So
Yeah, I mean, it's like if there's tools that we can use that can help us with our workflow, like we're using a DAW as opposed to writing it all out.
right,
In
right,
college, you probably wrote out all the parts.
get them all out. Yep.
And I think that's kind of one of the advantages that us above 22-year-olds are going to have, is that they will not have done it the old way, if you will, right? They're just coming in and working in the box, and at the same time, we're not John Williams or of a uber mature age yet, where it's almost too much to take on. I know we had a lady in our group, one of our communities. She was 80 some years old, and it was tough for her to come in and start working with a DAW,
I bet.
because she had been, she was a professional oboe player and did all these other wonderful things, and wrote beautiful music, but it was hard for her to kind of come into that. And because, like, as we come in, I go, okay, I'm 61, and I've got maybe 20 years, right? Before my ears and, other things start failing on me. So, I look at that window of how much time I have, at 80 years, how far is she going to get into being able to mix from a production standpoint?
Right.
And that, if you're John Williams, you can just, the team shows up,
Right.
you do your thing and everybody else does theirs on top of it, and it all works.
Right.
And that's a whole different skill set that I think we're going to miss. And like, how many of the young generation can, do math without a calculator?
Well, I don't think I can anymore. So
Well, yeah, well,
So-
if you don't use it, you lose it, right?
right. So here's a piece of, I think, optimistic. Here's an optimistic comment for you, and that is, when virtual orchestral libraries started to get really good, or actually even before they got really good, there were people who were saying, "Well, that's it. We won't have live musicians anymore.
Yep.
Live musicians are dead. That's it. Forget it. Just hang up your oboe and go flip burgers somewhere." But But that is not at all what happened. And now we're at the point where these virtual libraries are really, really good and
Yep.
still have live musicians. So
Well,
I
it's like
think,
everybody thought that live music was dead once disco came in. And
yeah,
it had its little bubble, but then it really spawned more live music.
well,
And
but that's my point. I think that yes, maybe AI music will get better, but it will get better alongside of the things that we are using now. And there'll be a place for it. There'll be the right time to use it. And there'll also be the not so right time to use it, the not so right appropriate place to use it. And so we go back to, the human aspect. So I really do think I think that that's really what does happen in technology. I mean, you know, there are computers, but people still, write, use pen and paper for whatever, right? So shopping lists away. So I don't think it's ever a question of total replacement. It's these technologies grow up sort of alongside of um, the human experience.
I agree. So what is the experience that you've had in your music career that stands out the most? What was like, hey, that's my attaboy moment. I'm really proud of this. What's your proudest moment with music?
Wow. So I've actually had, different. I'd say I've had, sort of three different kinds of segments in my musical life. When I was very young, um, and when I was in college, and then now. And
Mhm.
so probably when I was very young, my teacher would put on recitals, and all her students would perform. And so performing and having people clap after you're done was
Wow.
was
The first experience with that, I'll bet that was one.
yes.
Yeah, you
And
remember that.
I give her a lot of credit for that because that's a very, very important skill and experience to expose young children and young people to. And I give her a lot of credit for that. When I was in college and I was doing the musical theater, performing, it was just I like performing. I liked getting the applause. I don't perform now, but I did like it. And now I think, I've had a very exciting year this past year. I doing that film score in 2022 was just it was just so amazing that I had the chance to do that and consider that, there's some people who go through years of film school and they're still looking for their first project. And here I got it, and I did it, and it came out great, and the director liked it, and it's going, to various film festivals and all this kind of stuff. I'm very proud of that.
Excellent. Well, and you're gearing up through Mark's program with Momentum. You're getting ready to hunt for bear. You're getting
Yes.
all those. You're really
Yep.
locking in those skills.
For Bear, I like that.
That's what it takes is, get prepared. You're a template. You're going to have, you're always going to be working on your template. Next year, you're going to
Right.
have a new thing with it. You're going to add a new library or 10 libraries, whatever. And you're always going to find something new. I mean, what I look for as composers, hey, look for this big tip. There's always good deals during Black Thursday, Friday, Wednesday, whatever it is through
Yeah.
this holiday season. Yeah,
Yep.
all of them go crazy 30, 50, 75% off, and you get some great deals. And then, don't go crazy, but every year you can get a few because every library is a new instrument that you're learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
From the technical standpoint, from understanding that instrument, how it's a whole new thing. So you don't,
Yes.
yeah. I hope that folks won't get too ambitious with their library purchases, but get enough that you can have some fun and
Yeah.
explore more.
It's very tempting. My cohort in Momentum, we just went through Black Friday and all that, and we're like, oh, I just bought this and that. it was just, it was insane. And I kept saying to them, just hang on, remember, you have to actually use these things. So go ahead and,
It's a purpose. Like, so we just did
yeah.
this, Art and Mike from our group. We just did this scoring for this contest that's coming up with
Oh, yes, I saw that.
the film festival. Now we didn't record that one because these are scores that are going into contests and so forth. But we talked about them, and it's a Native American folklore. Well, it's we would get a lot. Art had some libraries for flutes that really were nice, and they worked for that. I mean, I actually had a flute,
Oh,
that I played with.
the thing.
I didn't use it because it's so far out of tune, but I used it to formulate what I was going to do, right? But when you have something, okay, I need a flute, and like you're looking through, well, it doesn't quite sound like
Right.
what you're looking for. That's a good time to get a library. Get the library that's going to work for you for what you need.
Yes.
uh, we did a thing with on Fela Kuti, which was he's a Ugandan artist that created Afrobeat, and
Mhm.
he had did a lot of things with these little guitar riffs that these little types of riffs. Well, I couldn't find the right, you've got a great rock guitar sound, you got a great little, flamenco guitar, but finding those right little sounds for what you're looking for and finding the right libraries, that's the time to really kind of go out and look for it.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's usually not during Thanksgiving and the holiday to get it. So
Well, yeah, you hope your time. Well, sometimes you have to spend some money, especially, when you're first putting together your collection of instruments, because these things are expensive. I know there's not sometimes you can't avoid that. But I just yesterday I bought a wonderful string library from Spitfire.
Mhm. Which
Again,
one?
they are not a sponsor of this
Oh,
podcast.
they are, yeah.
I bought it's part of their originals series called Intimate Strings because I really wanted a string library that was very dry, didn't have a lot of room sound in it.
Mhm.
It sounded like a smaller section of violins. And it was $20.
So was that more like that's a darn good deal. Um,
Yes.
for Spitfire, they've got well, like, do you find that that's more of like a string quartet in a smaller space, kind of a
No,
sound,
because
or is that more?
no, because it's actually an ensemble patch, so you don't have control over the individual libraries. But what it did have is it had some articulations that I didn't have in any of my libraries. And I liked that drier sound because again, it's all about blending. So what you learn when you go through any kind of film scoring course is that nobody does this with one string library. You have to blend different libraries depending on what kind of music you're writing. And so that only gives you more justification for buying more libraries, but it's also a skill in and of itself to understand how to blend these libraries together. And so
Well,
you have to understand the strengths and the weaknesses of each library.
well, then, yeah. So, like, for example, I work with trailers, and like there's a library called Unstrung that from Fallout that has extra little bite. It's just this like, it's like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't use that for a love ballad,
No, you
but
would.
in a trailer where you want that ostinato to stick out and jump in somebody's
Right.
face, it's like that's it,
Perfect.
you know.
Perfect.
So it's knowing, I guess, what timbres you want to pull out of the instruments, because there's so, I mean, BBC, the BBC libraries that Spitfire does a wonderful job. There's plenty of great string libraries out there, and each one of them sounds a little different because they were recorded different. It's a different set of musicians and that kind of thing. So it's really, your template is your band, okay?
Right.
And you're going to add some more folks to your band. They're going to have more capabilities and that sort of thing. So, that's that's the really, how's your band doing? You taking care of them? You're feeding them?
Right.
So do you see yourself where we were talking, we got kind of sidetracked more on the AI, but where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? What's your, what do you think your main goal is going to be once you get through this course? Really get in. You really want to be working. I take it in doing scoring for short films.
Yes, I like that. I like independent films. I like and if I had a chance, I tell you though, if I had a chance to work on a feature-length film, and I don't mean a big studio, I mean, I'm talking about still the independent filmmaker industry. I would love to do it, and I would, get some people to help me, and that would be great. But I think what I would like to do is take all this, all this education that I'm getting over the next couple of months on using orchestras and scoring for picture, and actually put it to use. And I do think also that there's a lot of overlap between film scoring and production music. And so I'm also hoping to get better at creating production music and get more library contracts, because
And
for
what
us,
what style, or what do you think the niche is that you're going to go after?
it depends on the library. So I think that I feel like I'm getting good enough on orchestra with orchestral music, that's something that I could definitely um, do well in. Also piano, solo piano. I do well with that. I also really like to collaborate with singers. I'm not a songwriter myself, but I've done a few collaborations with singers, and I really like it. And so I'd like to do some more of that as well.
That's fun. Well, that's, too much more than three buckets. And it's like, sure, you can see a taxi queue come up for an EDM song. Well, I could do that, but am I going to do it as good as somebody that's been doing
Oh,
a lot
yeah,
of EDM?
yeah,
It's like, okay, I'm going after this orchestral thing. I'm going to nail that. I'm going to do really good with that. I'm going to do the songwriters, and then I'm going to score a picture. I mean, if you're targeting those three things, which it sounds like that's your agenda, um, the advice that I'm sharing that was given to me is like, find those three or four niches, and then just keep working on getting better at those.
right,
I would.
right. Exactly. And the other library contract that I got as a result of Taxi
Mhm.
was for two orchestral cues of mine. So so that was very encouraging. It sounds, and this library owner was I met him after a feedback session, one of those panels that they have, and
Mhm.
he seemed to be very discerning in his feedback, and was very, very blunt and no holds barred kind of feedback. And so when I met him after that, he gave me his card. He said, "Oh, why don't you send me some music?" I said, "Okay, well, what are you looking for?" And he said, "Well, I need some, was sort of uplifting orchestral." And I said, "Okay, yeah, I think I have something
Just
for
so happens, I'm so
you."
glad you asked.
So here's the funny part. So I went home after the taxi rally, and I knew exactly which cue I wanted to send him, but it wasn't quite ready yet. It needed some polish. So I dragged it out and I worked on it for a couple of days, and I thought, oh, he's going to hate this. He's not going to like it. I'm going to send it to him. He's going to, read me the riot act like I have no business sending this to him. I was halfway through an email telling him that I wasn't going to send it to him. And I stopped myself and I said, "Nope, you're not going to send this email. You're going to go back to work. You're going to finish that cue and you're going to send it to him." And
Note to self.
I did, and he liked it. And not only did he like it, he wanted some more. And so I sent him, I sent him the first cue that I did for the Momentum program.
Mhm.
I said, "Look, this is only a minute long because it was actually an exercise for my class." But he liked it. He signed it.
Like,
So
yeah, that's
so he
perfect.
signed both those cues. So, that was very encouraging to me because they were orchestral. So it makes me feel like I'm on the right track here. I am getting better at
That,
it.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, well, so you have music and it seems like you're really focused on this. Your career is moving forward, connecting with libraries. This is all really exciting stuff. What are the things that Janet likes to do for fun for herself? What do you do outside of music to kind of get recharged and that kind of thing?
Well, we're big on board games, in our
Oh,
board games and card games. So my husband and I, well, both our boys are obviously out of the house. They're actually not even in the country.
oh
Um,
wow.
so, so after dinner, my husband and I will play a game. Yesterday we had no, last night we had an absolutely cutthroat game of Monopoly.
Oh, I
So,
was gonna, we outlawed that in our family. It's against the law because me and my brothers, like going after each other with parts of vacuum cleaners, like yeah, like
well,
oh,
we didn't get that carried away, but
well, I hope not.
no, no. So yeah, we like to play games. I love to travel. And so,
Where have you been and where do you think you'd like to go?
oh, well, as I said, my our two sons are not even living in this country. So our older son lives in Munich, Germany,
Oh
and
wow.
younger son just in October moved to Thailand. So
Two interesting places to bucket list.
yes.
I'm going, yeah, there you go.
So our older son has been in Germany for uh almost 10 years. And so we've
Wow.
been to Germany many times visiting him, and we've been other places with him as well. And so now Thailand is going to be on our list next year after Momentum is done, though.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, you
and
have so like Germany, that's the nice thing about going to Germany is you can kind of that's like skip and hopping to wherever else.
oh,
There's all
it's
so many
right
other
smack in the
places to
middle of
go.
Europe, so you can go pretty much anywhere from there.
Yeah.
And my husband is actually half Peruvian, and he
Oh
still has
wow.
family in Peru. So we've been to Peru a few times.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And so we love to travel. And yeah, so
You
that's what.
take anything with your music with you? Like, when I go to Brazil, and we go there usually every year. I take a rig with me, a laptop and that sort of thing. Do you take like I don't have one of those recorders, but sometimes, if you want to record cool sounds, do you take any of that stuff with you?
Well, I haven't had to yet, but I think when we go to Thailand, we're going to be gone for a few weeks, and I would hate to be without my stuff for that
Yeah.
period of time. So I think I'm going to end up buying a laptop. I don't have a laptop now, but I think I'm going to have to buy a laptop. And I've been looking at foldable pianos. So I don't know if you've seen these things. I don't care about the sound because I'm connecting it to the laptop. All I need is the MIDI
But
cable.
then I don't have them in here because I have them with my where my laptop is in the house. But the getting those little keyboards, there's some really little. I mean, for me, I looked all around to try and find the little ones that would fit into a backpack
No,
because I want
these
to
I'm
take
talking about
everything into a backpack.
these actually fold. So
Yeah, I know. I've seen those. The
you
action
can
sort
get
of sucks
yeah,
on
a
them.
full size keyboard that actually folds, and you can carry. So and they're actually not expensive because there's nothing to them. It's just
Yeah, just a controller.
yeah. So
You can have everything together for that. That's yeah, there's a variety of ways to kind of approach that, depending on, what you would use it for when you're, doing. I mean, if you're going to use it for composing, you don't need all the keys. Okay. You can get the little one. But
right,
if you're going to go and you're going to play anything, you need at least the 73 or whatever, you don't
yeah, yeah, yeah,
64
exactly.
maybe.
We'll see though. I mean, if we'll see. We'll see. With any luck, I'll have some sort of project that I'm working on, and I'll have to I'll have to come up with a mobile rig somehow. So we'll see.
What's your favorite library that you have right now?
My favorite. Oh,
Music library.
well, wow. Uh, I don't know. You have to be more specific, right? So
What's your favorite string library?
my favorite string library. I think I have to say the one I just bought for $20. I really like it. The original's Intimate Strings. That's really good.
You go. What's your dream collaboration?
Uh, scoring a film with Thomas Newman.
There you go. That's another one. So if you could leave a tip for
That a little
anybody,
ambitious?
no, not at all. Actually, I met somebody that we started talking. She was actually a member of the Composer Exchange now. She used to sing in choirs with the Rolling Stones and done some things,
Oh,
but she had gone to a couple different film things while we were there at Taxi, and she shows me a picture on her phone, of her and Thomas Newman.
oh, wow. Who
Yeah.
was
Oh,
who, what-
what's her name?
if you remember, just the
I
message.
do. I'll introduce you.
Yeah.
Sal. The name escapes me right
Okay.
away. She's
That's
very
fine.
talented pianist, composer, done some wonderful things. She's from the Ukraine. Saba. I don't want to
Oh,
get
she
this.
was the young woman from Ukraine.
Yes,
I know who you mean, but I didn't meet her. Yes, I know who you mean.
well, I feel horrible for forgetting her name. But anyway, she's really an amazing talent, and I'll hopefully we'll see her in some. I plan to interview her next year, so I
Oh,
will.
there you go.
Look at that. I hold up my thumb and it goes like boop, like look at all of a sudden it goes automatically to I didn't
Yep,
touch
look at
it.
that. It's
Anyway,
AI again.
so if you were gonna give a piece of advice to anybody that wants to get into film scoring and be a composer, what would you suggest?
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not. No, I'm kidding.
I
Um,
know.
wow. I feel like I'm still a beginner at it myself, so I don't know how much advice I could really give. But let me see. I think that I would say that film scoring is like any other kind of composing, except that I think what the big difference is you have to understand that it's not about the music, that the music is there serving a different purpose. And if you're more of an artist than a composer, then you might not like film scoring. But if you're a composer, if you're willing to be um, play a supportive role in a larger work of art, which is a film, then you have the right frame of mind for it. But if you are more of an artist, where the focus is more on you, then that might not be a good fit. I'm not saying it wouldn't work, but you would have to be able to, let's say, compartmentalize. So here's me, the artist, and here over here is me, the film composer, and they are not the same thing.
Mhm. What is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you in the music business? Just the nuttiest, like weirdest story that like just stands out in your head.
Oh, um, well, the it's kind of in a negative way. It was kind of crazy. So I had a track placed in a film, an independent film. I didn't score it. It was a licensing deal,
Mhm.
and I found out from the director that he had removed it and replaced it with something else. And so I was like, huh? Um, so that was kind of crazy. I don't know about any other kind of crazy things. I did get to perform live this past summer, and that was a lot of fun. I haven't performed live in a long time, and it was okay. I approached it like a classical concert, and that's not at all what it was. It was a jazz gig, so I had to sort of change my frame of mind on that. But it was a lot of fun, and I did it with one of my co-writers, and we had a blast. And I hope I can do it again.
Well,
Um,
that was my next question. Do you want to play more live? Is that on your
no,
horizon?
I don't know. I can't do a whole gig. I'm not interested in doing an entire gig by myself, but being sort of a guest uh, artist with my with my collaborator, I think that would be great. I would do that again. It was a lot of fun. And you know, getting to play with, I mean, you're a drummer, so you always play with a band, but I very rarely get to play with a band. So that was the bee's knees to me.
Cool. Well, Jenna, thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your story with the folks that will hopefully take the time to take a listen to what you had to say and your great ideas. I wish you the best on your journey. This
Thank
is
you. Thank you,
a
Chris. I
never
really
ending.
enjoyed this. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And you were interviewed, by the way, in another film, in which I think people can see if on your website, correct?
Yes, on my YouTube channel, the name of the film was a short film put together by some female music producers and composers, and it was the me and 5 or 6 other women, um, music producers mainly, who were interviewed about, you know, how the music industry looks from our perspective.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I was
It's a great piece. It was really well done, and you had some great little, what I'm going to call it, a sound bite, but you had some nice little statements
yeah,
that
yeah.
intertwined in there, and it was the other women that were participated were very interesting, and they had interesting stories. So I'd encourage folks to go take a look at Janet's website, which is janetbmusic.com,
.com, yes. And my
and I'll have the
YouTube
links
channel.
to that down below. So thank you again, Janet, for joining us. And I hope that many great things happen in your career. And we'll see you the next time on the high note.